if there are any questions, not only on the news media or anything, but anything in general that you'd like to ask me about, please do ask away. Yes, Dennis?
Mike, are your colleagues in the press or media professionals, do they know that you're conservative or that you...
Yes, I do not hide, and I have...
conflict?
And let me clarify. There is no conflict, and in fact, I have spoken with and speak with, on a regular basis, several of the politicians in our area who are Democrats, who are liberals, who have views that are very, very different than my personal views. I do not hide. I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican. I hold dear a lot of things that they may disagree with. One of the most important things that I hold dear, and I think is most important about the news media that they are not doing, is my personal view doesn't really matter. Not when I'm speaking to them, not when I'm covering an event. When it comes to the healthcare reform as a great example, how many of you actually heard that right now the Department of Health and Human Services is preparing to gather the medical records of every single one of you? That's only half the room. Shouldn't that be something that should be on every news program? Shouldn't that be a headline in the newspapers? Now, some may say, politically that's not advantageous. It doesn't reflect well on what the media, or some media outlets, believe is advantageous for their politicians, the ones they support, they think are great. I'm not addressing that issue and making that public because I think it's a great thing or because I think it's a horrible thing. I think that we the people need to be aware of it and make a decision on that. The government doesn't get to unilaterally decide that. We decide that.
Do you know if we can call our doctor's offices and say to them, you know, we do not want them releasing any of our records to the federal government? And if they have to, I mean, that should be HIPAA.
There's three answers to that. The government is looking at this as a three-pronged approach. First, they're going to ask you to give them your medical records. If you do not do that, or if that fails, the second approach that they're looking at right now is they're going to go out and they're going to go to the state and mandate that the state collect that information. If for some reason our individual states have a difficulty or refuse to do so, they're then going to go to the actual healthcare companies and mandate and enforce the regulations for them to take the information they collect anyway and hand it over to the government. That's what's currently working in the works, and this is mandated by the healthcare reform. In one of those 2,000 pages that almost no one. I'll get to you next. Yes.
Regarding the healthcare reform, we can tell that it's a huge problem because there are over 1,000 groups, states, people that are finding ways to organize. Do you know for a fact, because I've heard this and read this on email, that the Muslims are not required to be a part of it because it's their religion?
That's another problem with the media today and politics today, in that when groups whose purpose is to inform the public, when politicians who are supposed to listen to the public fail to do their jobs, we start seeing other information. I can tell you that to the knowledge that of what I've read in it, and from every expert that I have addressed and read about, that is not true. That is a bit of misinformation. They are subject to it just like everyone else is in America. And I think that's a failure of the media. They should have poured over this. They should have never allowed our politicians to go into a back door, spend 3 days, come up with a law, pass it 3 hours later, and make a statement to us Well, don't worry, pass it and we'll find out what's in it and we'll love it. That's insane. And I think the media failed on that. Hang on, let me get the document.
Have they found out what the criteria are for what they use to grant waivers? I mean, here's something that's a really important thing, and there seems to be no guidelines. Nobody can find out what are the guidelines.
I can say that I personally don't know the criteria for the guidelines. I have yet to see a single source that has a cohesive and consistent answer on that.
The suspicion is how much money you pay them.
It's,
I mean, you hate to be negative, but
it's a great question. And again, that's a failure of, and these are the highlights and these are the questions that I think you're asking some great questions. And I'll take more. I know I have another one from you, but this is what you guys, what the Tea Party across the nation and you yourselves do so well. Bring up that question, because I can tell you, I've been doing this for 6 years. I get read in 125 countries around the world every month. And I have not noticed people pay as much attention and start asking as many questions before the Tea Party was out and saying, let's have an answer, as we do now. I don't see politicians as nervous and more willing to answer questions before as they are today. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to speak to you and to encourage you on what you're doing. But I do want to take your question as well.
Michael, with all due respect, are there other black Americans in this area who are conservative? And I should know that. I should know that as well as you do, but I don't. I'm reaching out to you. And if there are, how do we get them to come in, to join forces with us to move ahead? I mean, those are questions I can't answer. I've always wondered. The first time I met you a couple months ago, I was blown away. I'm like,
yeah, and Herman Cain runs into it.
but you must be
the former football. There are black conservatives.
I know there are.
And people go, where? No, you don't. You don't exist. And it's a great question. Where are they? And I'll tell you the answer. They're in hiding. That's pure and simple. They're in hiding.
They're busy raising families with their job.
No, it's not. It's not just because they're raising their families. It's not just because of their jobs. I'm telling you the absolute honest truth. They are terrified of being found out. They don't want to be known.
By the black community, not by...
No, every community. It is, look at what happens to Herman Cain. You wouldn't believe the threats I get occasionally. It's because it is understood. And this is a problem. And this is why the Tea Party gets attacked, and I think the media is not doing their job. The attack is on if you are not conforming to, here's a slot, you fit into there. And since I'm black and I'm involved in politics, I have no option but to be a Democrat. And I have no voice other than to support President Obama. And I have to ask anyone who would say that of anyone, of any color, of any creed, of anything you can name in America, if you were to dare tell someone you must think like this, you have only one voice and you can only vote one way, who here would not be enraged? Who here would be not be insulted? Where would we see? We would see in every news media, if every single white American or every Asian American or every Jewish American, it doesn't matter what the group is you're talking about. If you were to see a news article tomorrow that said that every single one of you had to vote exactly this way and no other way, you would be enraged. But what we have seen instead is many individuals in America, many groups in America have been forced into silence by the media and by the fact that there is no other voice out there up until now. And there has been no way to say, well, I'm a black conservative, and not be so criticized, so ostracized, that it's not worth the fight. Not me by myself. But now this is no option. We have the Tea Party. And as I said, whether people agree with the Tea Party or not, we now have voices that are coming out. And we have people speaking up and saying, no, that's not right. There is something else. So I expect, like Herman Cain, like myself, like Lynn Swan, like so many other black conservatives, you're going to see a lot more of us. You're going to hear our voices a lot more. But how do I get them out right now? We speak. We make these contacts. They see my videos, they read our articles, and they have a conversation and say, you know what, I'll show up. Yes, Doctor?
I had made this point at one of the other meetings, is that the Tea Party has been legitimated. It was an April issue of the Journal of Foreign Affairs.
Mhm.
You're familiar with that? That's the policy makers. These are the wonks that make the policy that the politicians glom onto.
Mhm.
They compared the Tea Party to Jacksonian Democrats, who are messy, unruly, naive, but important.
Yeah.
So we had been legitimated by a very important traditionalist part of the media. This particular magazine is very well respected as being pretty nonpartisan. The Journal of Foreign Affairs.
But, as I said,
We
no-
have some legitimate.
There's no question. There is no question that you are.
They understand.
There are some organizations in the media that will always attack. But I think there's
Michael,
growth.
your talk reminds me of the Mahatma Gandhi saying, it's my favorite, as it relates to Tea Party. First they ignore us, then they mock us, then they fight us, then we win. I think we're in phase 3.
It could well be. It definitely may be. I think someone else back there had something to say. Did I see a hand before? No? Anything else about anything I could answer for anyone? Well, if that's all the questions, please, if there are any other questions about anything, I write on a regular basis. I cover a lot of the news. You'll probably see me a lot during the election season, back and forth. Don't hesitate to ask me a question. My blogs are open for comments for everyone, and I have contacts all over the place. You can always ask me about it. I'll be happy to speak to anyone anytime they want. Okay?
Thank you.